Welcome back to the time travel story that is 13 Sentinels. Now, I'm sure you probably got a lot of questions, so I'll do my best to answer them.
How many questions do I get?
You get exactly 3, and then past that, I go back into the Dragon Balls, and they get scattered across the entire world.
Okay, I wasn't listening to that. Is that Morimura on the right?
Yes. You have 2 questions remaining.
Wait, I wasn't... So, Gouto is the tall kid. No, that's not a question.
Gouto does not matter for this episode.
Question.
Clearly, the thing we're going to
answer.
be discussing this entire time is
That
how they
sentence.
built 5 identical cities emulating different periods of Japan as the mankind's last hope for a colony.
This is 2 questions left that I have. That wasn't a question. You just broke into
That's
the
true. I did
sentence
interrupt.
before I had a chance to end that sentence with a period, which I would have done. So, anyway, I guess, what the fuck is happening in this game?
Okay, so
5 identical cities.
this does kind of consolidate any sort of questions that you're going to have about this entire scenario. Basically, you remember when like Miura was looking, hey, why isn't there like a damage on this post 40 years in the future? That's because it's a completely separate
it's the
city.
same thing.
That's what they were building up to.
Yep, it wasn't actually.
What is a loop? Well, that's when they just purge all of the people living in these cities and then repopulate them as, part of the whole, terraforming colony thing. And I guess the idea here would be that characters like Ida or characters like 426 kind of were able to survive that destruction and then get into the new loop. That's why, Ida was saying, hey, we can always force a loop if we fail with the Sentinels because they're just going to force all the cities to be recreated like that. 2188, not far in the future, actually far in the distant past. That was when they were originally creating the whole colony project in the first place. And all of those logs, I guess, were the lead up to actually having this thing get sent off.
Okay.
And as you can see, it went so poorly that apparently Morimura decided to just turn all of the terraforming robots on the new colony, on the stupidly designed colony that they created.
Not 5 identical cities, but 5 cities that are very similar except for the era.
5 cities that, they even made the school in, the 1981 old.
So this is
to make it seem as if it had aged 40 years since the 1941.
Morimura,
except it didn't,
Akina,
because they just made it like that.
And Ida is on the
technology itself isn't difficult from 30 kilometers outside of town.
You sure don't seem like
from a couple miles over that direction. Not 40 years in the past. No, you don't understand. There's no time travel. That big dumb graphic of the clock spinning backwards, that was a lie.
It was a lie. Well, that's just showing that you're going counterclockwise amongst the 5 cities.
Yeah, so anything that you might by the way, just throw out any sort of ideas of time travel. That's gone.
We're in a space.
Yeah, you remember when we were talking about we don't know what's going to be important and what's not going to be important? Time travel as a concept is not important.
So, are we on a planet or are we on a spaceship or both?
Well, given what we saw back in the thing with Shu, it's safe to assume that we're on a spaceship.
Okay.
Unless it's like a gigantic metallic enclosure on a planet.
Okay.
Either way, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. There's no outside, as far as we're concerned.
You can't go outside of the city. Or if you could, you'd probably die. Unless the terraforming robots did their work or are currently doing their work before they get teleported back into the 5 identical cities they created to destroy them.
Now,
because Shinamone... I mean, we saw kind of what happened. At the end of Hijiyama's last thing, they were talking about Project Arc and everything. Everybody was dead. Everybody was killing each other. So I guess Shinamone, or at least Shinamone Prime that existed back in 2188, was just sick of humanity and then wanted to sabotage the project.
So
okay, there you go.
The only people who are left right now who are actual human beings, is everyone a human being?
Yeah, I mean, there's like 1 million people living in each one of these cities.
Okay, and they're actual humans. They're not just they have implanted memories, but they're actual.
They do have implanted memories, but they are actual humans.
So they all have the nano machines, or just the pilots?
I think it's just the pilots, and that's because they got shot with the nanomachine injectors. I mean, well, I guess probably like people in the 2100s and people in like the 2060s maybe even might just have nanomachines because they have nanomachines. You know, that's just like a common thing.
Yeah,
then.
But they don't have the specific...
And by then, I mean in that particular sector.
But they don't have the specific gift/curse of piloting the Sentinels or getting a disease.
Right. They would just be used for like... other whatever you would use nanomachines for on a daily basis for civilian usage.
Okay. So the people are actually
from the year 2188, far in the past.
In other words, far in the future. So there's no.
Yeah, they're in 2104, except they're not. That's a lie.
So
it's all a lie.
Are they built? Are these five? Why do these 5 cities exist? Like, what are they doing?
Well, they're colonies meant to you know.
Why are they
set up?
Why are they going through the
set up humanity's future on other planets, on other terraformed planets?
Why are they simulating the events that actually?
Why are they simulating? Why are they simulating World War II?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they built it like that.
Well, of all the things. You know, if I had to go back to any year in the last, 500 years, I definitely... 1944 sounds like one of the worst possible years in, human history.
Oh, what do you mean? We're going to stake the entirety of humanity's future on one of these 5 ones that is patterned exactly after that, including, bombing airplanes, military airplanes that we saw in the background of the 1944 sector.
Yeah, war is famously efficient, an efficient use of resources.
By the way, nobody was told about this. Nobody was told that they're going to be in a colony. I don't know what the plan is, they're just gonna crash land on a planet and be like, okay, you're the last human colony. Well, have fun, guys.
In fairness, I mean, there's no reason to assume that humans would come up with a great plan to deal with this kind of thing. It could just be they were dumb, they just made a dumb plan.
Oh, it's not that I don't trust these guys to be. It's not that I'm like, oh no, these people living in 1980 would have no idea how to live on a newly terraformed planet. It's more like, why would you fucking do it like that?
Why do you have to turn it into?
Why would you just have it suddenly open up and hey, you're on Tau Ceti 4?
Well, yeah. Why?
Congratulations, you made it. Now go and ensure mankind's future.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought we were in 1985 Japan. No, that was all a lie.
That was all a lie. Yeah.
Now go and set up humanity's future.
It feels like, why would you make them?
By the way, there's other people from 5 other identical cities that are 40 years in the past and future from you.
And there are 5 million people total, so because there's 1 million each.
And you were all lied to your entire life. Now go and make that colony happen, boys.
Yeah, go and reproduce. I wonder if it's because they feel
Go and rebuild human civilization.
Well, the one thing I would say is humans, maybe the thought was that, we led...
there's Gouto in 2188.
Okay.
Yeah, you can clearly see that everybody that was working on the project was basically cloned and then put into, I guess, whatever the whatever their choice of era was. We saw Miura. We saw old Miura waxing nostalgic about the 1944s, and hey, guess where his clone is at? Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it was Miura's idea to create 1944 Japanland.
So it's kind of like a cross between Blade Runner and The Matrix, and a bunch of other stupid things.
It's
this feels like, okay, well, we're gonna mix Dark City with The Matrix.
Dark City, yeah, that's the one I was gonna say.
With Blade Runner, with every Philip K. Dick and Stanislaw Lem novel, I guess. Just throw everything.
What a pull!
Yeah,
I'll never hear anybody talk about Lem.
He literally, what a pull.
Shut up.
I know you didn't intend to do that. That's why it's actually really funny. We have Polish.
Anyway.
viewership, so yeah, I agree with you. What a poll.
I hope you can join me.
Okay, anyway, but yeah, it's
That might be the
I
dumbest
don't know.
joke.
I just this
Oh my god.
this plot just it's like okay, yes. That does allow you to kind of like really reconcile everything that's happened up to this point here, except like, oh my god.
So why is Goto so aware of everything that's happening?
Goto is not.
Okay. Oh, cheers.
Remember, nobody here, except for I guess Shu Mamaguchi, and Yuki, are aware of the fact that they're not actually on Earth.
So the Sentinels are just hidden among the population in various forms as like AI that are just
Sentinels are
not the
clearly
Sentinels.
just like a forked off version of the terraforming machines.
I mean, like, what I mean is the pilots.
They're like basically in that stupid UFO thing that's not actually the UFO, but like the
foundation of the
console
city.
for the colony ship.
Uh-huh.
It's like basically they just downloaded schematics for the terraforming robots, and they're like, hey, I bet we can put people in here instead.
So, Tetsuya, Ida, and the
Chihiro Morimura, Tetsuya Ida, 426, all people from previous loops, previous attempts at creating colonies.
Okay, and now we've become exceedingly efficient at it, except for the
Mira as well.
We've achieved 19.99% efficiency, and we're trying to figure out how we can get up to maybe 20. And we seem to have a hard limit of 20% efficiency. I don't know why.
Oh my god.
I mean, it might have something to do with having 5 identical cities, but
it might also have something to do with the fact that, you know, occasionally there are these terraforming robots that just attack the city.
Oh, yeah.
And what they do is they dig down to the terminal, which is the console for the ship, which that means then basically that just says to the ship, okay, this colony failed. Why would you... Okay, there's another question. Why would you have access to the fucking, like, colony ship in the cities?
Well,
like, why is it even possible to get down to those?
Well, you have to put a door somewhere. I mean, like, it's like the Truman Show.
You didn't tell anybody they're in a colony ship.
Well, why would they, yeah, why do you have to go? You don't have to travel anywhere. So how do they handle, like, not traveling anywhere? Like, never, ever traveling anywhere?
Basically, as Shu said, it's like, oh, our memories are being manipulated.
Right.
So I guess actually maybe everybody just does have nanomachines all the time.
Right, but they've got...
That's probably the thing.
They've got...
And that makes it so that they can just, like, alter memory to like, make it be like, okay, well, I don't want to go outside the city.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd like to go outside the city. No, you don't. Or, I don't know, I guess the colony ship just kills them.
Actually, there was a Deep Space Nine episode where they literally had that. Like,
the what?
There was a Deep Space Nine episode where there was a, specifically, like, a civilization, and it turns out they're actually a simulation for one guy. But it's real for them. It's real for him, and it's real for them, because they're computer programs, but they're real as computer programs. So they opt to keep it, and the crew leaves.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but it's not a 30-hour game.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is a...
We got. Don't forget
a valid
that this is the last of the first half of the characters.
Oh, yeah. No, I feel like what...
And remember, the only person who knows about this whole dumb thing is Shu.
Uh-huh. So, how does... But Gota understands this, right?
No, he doesn't. He thinks that this is a UFO.
Oh.
He thinks that this is a UFO buried underneath the city.
I see.
He even mentioned in the very start of this episode that it's just like, oh, this is from 2188, far in the future. It's like, it's not.
Oh, I see. So that was you
not
saying far in the past. I see, but the characters haven't figured it out.
Yeah, it's like, no, it should... That's the correct line.
And you've just been sitting on this for like 10 episodes.
Oh, yeah. It's like, yeah, I've had to sit on this the entire time because it's like, well, if I just came out and we just started talking about that, well,
that would break the whole game. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, would it really? I ran an experiment. I mean, yeah, okay, so there you go. There's the memory. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. There you go. Sector 0. But by the way, that's actually something we didn't even mention.
The space sectors?
Is that there were actually some pretty clear fucking hints for this originally. The 2188 areas were listed as being outside sector number.
Oh, okay.
When we were given like a date for when they're happening and everything during the logs, and like each one of the areas, each one of the identical cities is called sector like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's clever.
And it's like, that's a pretty obvious hint that it's like, okay, yeah, these are not actually on Earth.
Yeah.
These are not real cities.
Kind of like how Sonic...
I mean, they're real cities, but they're not real cities.
Yeah. It's like how Sonic says, like, okay, now we're in the green zone. That's how you know.
That's what Sonic says.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so there's an entire thing too. The memory transplants. So basically, Morimura is from one of the previous quote unquote loops, and that means that she's trying to, get her current incarnation in this timeline. This colony attempt to have her memories. To like become her.
Okay.
That's probably the same thing with Juro. And that's probably the same thing with
so
they're probably doing that under the guise of of making it so that he'll turn back into Juro Izumi. And then that's why also like Gouto, I suppose, was doing that to Tamao.
I see. So the reason to get back to Jiro Izumi is so that he'll find a way to kill Morimura and essentially the human species.
Well, the implication seemed to be that like Morimura and Juro were kind of like in love with each other. And okay, so Juro had to die because he was killing the kids.
Yeah.
That's puzzling.
Because as he said, the nanomachines that they have are the ones that are... Apparently that's the thing that cause of the Deimos invasions. We'll see more about that later.
So it's a love triangle between Morimura...
And it's like she wants to bring him back in current Juro, and then she wants to bring herself back to whatever that means. She's already here, but in the new incarnation. Okay, to make her the same person.
Okay, so Chihiro and so Chihiro.
Why is there a tiny Chihiro in 1945? I don't know.
Okay,
but I guess the idea is that you can just have more than one person in the different time periods. Because they're not actually time periods, they're separate cities.
So Morimura and Izumi are in love, or Morimura loves Izumi, or Izumi loves Morimura, and in turn, Megumi.
Morimura loves Izumi. I don't know if it's the other way.
So it's a love triangle kind of thing, like.
Is that supposed to be my future?
No, Morimura loves Izumi.
Okay.
Juro Kurabe is paired up with Megumi.
I know. I mean,
they're different characters.
I realize that, but Megumi seems to want to bring Izumi back because she loves Izumi. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that like
we are kind of forgetting about the fact that Juro doesn't give a fuck either way.
Oh, okay. Well, he just doesn't. I mean, he doesn't know enough to.
But at the same time, like Juro is paired up with Megumi, and like Morimura is not one of these characters. She is, but she's from a previous loop.
Okay. And so Gouto, he's the last character in the game, or at least
more or less,
or at least in this.
I think that to get to the end of his story, it's just like his final chapter or whatever, you need to have 100% completion on every other character.
Okay.
Now they won't let me spearhead the Sentinel.
He's kind of like the Omega character.
Okay, yeah.
I doubt my opinion will weigh much in their discussion.
So we're
that entire thing.
So by the time we get to this point, we have figured out, okay, so this is really almost like an epilogue to the other sections.
Yeah, I mean, well, the frustrating thing is that he doesn't know about this whole thing, so.
So he's kind of like wandering through it.
I mean, he is looking at a lot of like the 2188 logs.
Uh-huh.
But what are we finding out so far, really, aside from the fact that, like, yeah, back in 2188, there was a lot of fucking shit going on.
Well, we're going to find out what happened to his mother.
But otherwise, it seems like the colony experiment was entirely successful.
Well, we're going to find out how all anime was destroyed, and we're going to find out about his mother, who his mother really was.
I mean, but really, though, like, all anime was destroyed because they didn't want to create a 2188 city. They didn't want to create 2188 land. Yeah. They only wanted to go back 80 years ago and then back from then in increments of 40.
So what they're saying is...
Because that's how you design a colony ship, baby.
Well, there's probably like 8...
And never tell anybody they're on a colony ship.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, they're gonna figure it out somehow, or maybe they won't because of animation.
Yeah, they're gonna figure it out when the sky opens up and they're on a completely different planet.
yeah, they're gonna figure it out when somebody from 1945 goes to 1980.
Or when like the fucking entire ship suffocates because they ran out of oxygen.
Is that happening? Like, I feel like this is...
No, that's not happening.
Okay.
What did the police say?
When an asteroid crashes in. Splits the sky open and kills everybody in 2060.
It's actually just... You thought you were on Earth, but Earth was gone.
Yeah, and you've been lied to your entire life.
Complete dumbasses.
You've actually been living on a colony ship. What is...
It's just like the Matrix, which diegetically you would know.
Yeah, which diegetically you should have.
It's one of the most
like,
popular
recording of. Well, I mean, you guys in the 2020s and beyond, in 2080 land and 2040 land, they wouldn't have that.
Yeah, well, it's just like for you.
You know, a mile that way.
It's just like a PKD.
They don't have that.
Uh-huh. Well, they have PKD though.
So, anything helpful in its footage?
Philip K. Dick.
Oh boy.
Have you actually read any of his novels? I'm curious because.
Any of what?
Any of Philip K. Dick's novels? Like, I'm sure you've read, you've seen like...
No, I've seen movies.
Okay. Because they're all incredibly wild. He just throws a bunch of things at the wall. The movie...
Is that reminiscent of this game?
Yes, very much, actually. But it's better because he's better at writing, like, the psychology of characters, which makes it...
He doesn't create 5 identical cities?
It's actually weird because, like, you mainly have seen, like, his movies are... They have almost nothing to do in terms of the character with the things that he writes. And if anything, the plot contrivances in a PKD story are even more complex. Like Minority Report is all about how the presence of the oracles themselves changes the timeline. And they keep overwriting each other's timelines kind of thing. Like, that's the story. And it's like this, it's so much more convoluted.
Weird.
It's almost like a computer science short story. But
are you telling me that he didn't write any stories with 5 identical cities, though?
He certainly could have. I mean, he had
5 identical cities where they lied to everybody, where they dark city'd everybody. I mean, that's pretty much it. Everybody's been dark city'd.
There's a story where a guy in a gadget shop in like Kansas accidentally builds a portal to an alternate version of Earth. And there's also a thing with like the moon is a sex base, and there's a, I mean, just there's tons of stuff, and it's very similar to this. It's just that kind of like sprawling, all these things coming together, and I think the president in that is like modeled after Mussolini. I think it's just like you can imagine just how convoluted these things get, but it works because he's so good at writing characters. Like the main character of that story is like a guy who's a little bit too timid and passive and needs to learn how to be more assertive in his life and less depressive. And he did a good job with writing that. And he wrote a good, like, the Mussolini president was well written too. In the same book. You know?
Okay.
Like,
well, anyway, this is the game now.
Anyway, yeah,
they confirmed that yes, 426 is AI right now. There you are. I mean, we're getting like a little bit more of a. Also, I guess in some way Gouto is doing.
Sorry,
4 others came 16 years ago because that's the entire thing.
So the alternate.
Basically, the reason why Morimura went back 16 years instead of 40 years You know what I mean.
So
that's basically the start of a loop.
Oh, okay.
Basically, right now, I guess the entire world, as we see it, between these 5 identical cities, has existed for only 16 years.
That's actually pretty weird.
And prior to that, it existed for, like for each one of the loops, it exists for about 16 years, and that's when all of the robots come and destroy everything. By threatening because what the robots do is they're not there to kill anybody. What they do is they threaten the colony ship by digging down deep into the fake Earth to try and access like the colony ship terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the colony ship sees that as a threat and is like, "Oh boy, looks like we got to reset these colonies."
So we decided
Yeah.
to stick to the plan.
And then all the colonies get reset.
So-
then we do it again.
I don't mean to be too harsh, but I do think
We're shifting.
this is maybe...
From what I can tell.
This plot kind of ruins everything else that's happening, because it just means that everything is just,
The last thing I remember.
mapping out what the timeline is in a way that's a lot less interesting than trying to put together a time travel plot. Like,
Oh yeah,
and then
remember, no time travel exists in this game.
I know.
There is absolutely no time travel.
They just make it seem like everyone is time traveling.
That was a lie. That was all a lie. It was just the absolutely ridiculous way that they assembled everything that made it seem like time travel.
Everything in the first 10 to 15 hours of this game was a complete lie, because it was hinging on an apparent time travel that wasn't actually real.
I told you that it's just like you don't know what's going to be important and what's not. Little did you know that time travel was unimportant to this entire plot.
Hey, so when I said that the only thing that's different is lighting, that actually might be literally true. Like, they probably animated all the different scenes in a different state of the world, and then they just lighted it. They used different lighting on it.
They just have a different sun there.
Just that's how they did the art design. Yes, like literally. I'm not kidding. Like, they use the same landscapes. They just make some of the buildings. They make more or less buildings depending on the era.
Well, I mean, it was always supposed to be the same city.
What is
Yeah, you asked. I remember you asked me at one point. It's like, is this supposed to be Tokyo? And I'm like, no, it's a fake city.
feeling?
Now this
Japan.
This
It's supposed to be a fake Japanese city, and it's just like, oh, didn't you know?
well,
It's actually supposed to be 5 fake Japanese cities.
Anyway.
well, no, I mean, but I'm saying like
From.
the art in real life. The game artist designed designed one landscape for each of the backgrounds for each of the eras. Like,
Well, for the most part, this entire the 2100s, all we ever see is that one bunker.
yeah.
I'd like to revisit
It's like for the other areas, we don't really see too much
So-
aside from fire.
So they just have a few, like they've got a few that are in 1945, 1985, and 2025.
Yeah, they actually have quite a few in 1945.
Yeah.
That is true. They have like a Krabe household. They have the school. They have the factory. Although a lot of those are very similar.
Yeah.
And then 1985 is kind of the big one. In the 2100s, they have like that one indoor scene in a skyscraper
Well,
where we saw Shinamone that one time. And like,
I'm bound to have some memory.
it's mostly rubble though.
Now, it is time for you to face a harsh truth of your own about this game, is that visual novels are very much like budget games in terms of how they have to do these kinds of convoluted storytelling things in a lot of cases because they're extremely cheap, and that's the only way they can get it done. I believe
They could also just scale back the story a little bit.
I believe the Zero Escape guy. I mean, that's why they're always written in this sort of seat of your pants, like anything can happen. In the same way that, say, PKD is kind of a pulp writer. Like, he's a brilliant pulp writer, but it's kind of like he's writing by the word, and he hopes everything comes back together at the end. You try to make it fit at the end, but you don't think about that when you start, because you could never start writing if you had to think.
Yeah, you can say that, but it's also like it's not like I had a very incredible love for visual novels prior to this.
No, I understand, but like I'm not like I think this is like the reality is that they create these elaborate writing situations, and they probably work from a kind of template based on others that they've played. It's a genre, and so I'm not saying this to defend it or anything, but like they have to do all the work with writing and some minimal art design and some minimal gameplay. Like that's why the mini game isn't very sophisticated. It's because that's just this genre. It's kind of cheap. It's cheap to make, and
man, you can write a good story that takes place in a single house.
If you can make a,
we've mentioned over the course of doing many series, we've mentioned like many different plays that take place in a single setting.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's the thing is like a skilled writer can do wonders with this genre, but it's also like you kind of have to like there have to be games that aren't like 90% of everything is crap, and this is not crap.
Why does it have to be convoluted and huge? Why can't it be simple and small?
Because you've got to do everything with words. You can't like voice acting and words. It's not like there's gameplay to fall back on. Like most of the games that you play, if the story's like
yes, but you can make it simple and small is what I'm saying. That's what I was saying about like the minimal background stuff. They didn't need to make the game this huge then.
That's true. But I mean, a lot of that is in your mind. Like it's incredibly well established. Like this elaborate time space structure.
It's not time based.
Well, I mean, things did happen. Like things are happening in a chronology just because there's no time travel.
Okay, yes, time does exist in this universe.
I mean,
I guess you're correct on that.
But that whole thing with the 2188 like being in the past. Like there's a chronology here. Like there is something happening here. It just
yeah, but those are all events happening entirely separate from everything except for Shinomune did sabotaging the colony project.
By the way, I do want to point out that this was all this is all a lie, and I'm not defending them, and I'm not defending the genre. I'm just saying like this is a little bit like it's not like shocking to me that they patched it together. They decided on one.
Well, I'm not shocked by the fact that they had to do something to make this work.
Yeah, and any actual answer is going to be disappointing. Like there's just no way about. I mean, you set up a game like this. I mean, that's really the problem is that
they couldn't even do the time travel thing.
They should have started with the characters in some sense.
What sort of game starts with, hey, it's about time travel, and then halfway through says, no, lol, no time travel?
That is kind of a David Cage-esque thing right there.
If you recall.
Yeah, I mean, it does have that sort of reminiscence of introducing demons in your sci-fi story.
Yeah, actually, you're the protagonist. I mean, a lot of these, just this is kind of like this whole, there is kind of a genre of, what is it, like the mindfuck genre is what I've heard it called. Like, I mean, on some level, yeah, Blade Runner is kind of one of those. I mean, hey, so everything that they're saying about his past is just a lie? I can understand why Ridley Scott now is like, well, maybe he was a replicant. Maybe it's more about the questions that it asks. Because it's like, oh, well, you just made a movie.
The lost comparisons that I made to this game earlier feel more appropriate now.
Yeah. Actually, that's
although I do think that they planned this out from the very beginning because, hey, we've seen everything, all the pieces of the parts here fit together to create this story. So,
So I do think that one of the ways that they screwed up, and this is just like, doesn't make everything bad, but it just means like, you need to twist.
I don't think they screwed up. I think this is all very intentional.
I mean, I think they shouldn't have had the twist be halfway through the game as opposed to like 80% of the way through the game. Like it's the biggest twist, and realizing it makes everything feel irrelevant. That's fine.
Yeah, by the way, talked about before that there are some things that are gated off by you like finishing other characters.
I see.
I'm fairly certain you can do that Shu Amiguchi one fairly early on.
Yeah, see, that just seems like that's a sloppy decision, is what I would say. Because you could easily have gated that. But then I guess the whole problem is that it's titillating you to this punchline this whole time. They didn't spend the time to make the setups more enjoyable. And yet now they're saying it's a flashback. So they're clearly expecting you to have internalized the information that this is a flashback at this point, right? Like after the Amiguchi story, they are expecting you to understand this. Is that right?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Okay. Okay.
Unless you there's a lot of things that make me wonder. I don't know.
Okay. Because I feel like if they,
I don't know.
I mean, it feels like that's the kind of thing that you would mention. Like this should be the last, the last thing that you should learn in the game is that it's not real, and then the next, other than just wrapping up the story.
Would that be better though?
Well, because there's.
Or would this have been something that would have been better to be introduced an hour into the game?
Well, I don't want this to turn into a Persona cast. I swear to God.
Doesn't I mean, now we have a more concrete story happening.
Yeah, and I just feel like it feels like
there is for like 10 episodes there, around 10 hours.
It's a mystery, and we're finally living in the world that is part of the mystery, and everything else will be unfolding revelations that follow from that revelation. And it's kind of like, what are we doing here? Why are we still here?
13 Sentinels is a game, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, again, like
there's a lot of interesting decisions that were made in this.
I'm critiquing it because it's all story. It's a visual novel, right? Like that's all there is.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, the gameplay is not that good.
I mean, it's performing.
I talked about before. There's just like, you just throw down the auto turrets and let those take care of it. For you.
From the very beginning.
Every single turn, you throw down more auto turrets.
If you put more effort into it, then maybe you would have gotten the actual good ending, the good story.
It's entirely separate from the visual novel.
Yeah,
I talked about that like way earlier on. There's like the Remembrance, which is the visual novel section that we've been doing.
Oh,
and then there is Destruction, which is totally different selectable thing on the menu.
So I have to think that battle scene was probably the thing that they started with, and like they wanted to say, because at any point, I'm sure you know this with writing and stuff. Like you have a point that you want to make, or you have a starting point that you want to get to. Like it can be the last scene in the book, or it can be the first line in the book. But you start with something, and then you say, "Well, how can I convey this? How can I make this make sense?" I feel like they started with a kaiju battle, and they were like, "How do we make this original and interesting? Let's work backwards," and then they came up with this whole thing. Well, we've got to have different errors. What if it's time travel? Like why, and then they just added stuff and tried to make it make sense, and this is what they came up with. And that's how this is written. Is what I would.
I don't
guess.
know.
That's just a guess.
There's a lot of stuff that leads up to this being the twist.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure they didn't. They went back and made it.
Not like Persona 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. We do have to remember that you can't. That unlike Persona 5, you can go back and change things.
A significant portion of the plot in Persona 5 hinges on the word pancake as a slip-up.
The broken backspace key, as we talked about a lot.
Yes, this does not feel like a game with a broken backspace key. It feels like a game that was. It would be very hard to go back and re-edit it. And the thing is, I don't want to discourage. This is one of those things where it's such. I don't want to discourage people from trying to write this kind of story. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I feel like
it's so ridiculous that to make this plot work, they have to have 5 cities.
I know.
Of 5 cities designed after different time periods.
Yeah.
And then nobody can know about the fact that they're all fake.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is the purpose of sci-fi is sometimes to elaborate on this. What if time travel was just going over to the city right next to you? I mean, I don't want to say that that's completely stupid or ridiculous. It's
that's almost an interesting idea, but it took us 10 plus hours to get here.
Well, that's the thing is okay, you're trying to say something about the human condition.
That's not the premise that we were introduced.
Or you're trying to provide a personal expression, or you're trying to provide an intellectual challenge to the audience. And I feel like this game doesn't know what it wants to be because it's all 3 of those. It's trying to do all 3 of those, and it's not really succeed. It wants
to wow you with twists.
It wants to do everything with words, which is what this genre is, but it's like it somehow doesn't have the character chops to make us feel the characters as much as we should. And it just tries to paper over it by making everything a spectacle, just like everything. Everything is a, apocalypse or a total alternate dimension or everything. It's like putting every Twilight Zone episode into the same half-hour constraint and then stretching that out to 30 hours and seeing what that looks like. And I think the main takeaway from the series is that that doesn't work. That doesn't work. But
yeah, you can't just try to do everything.
You can't.
You can't just have it be. I mean, so does this?
There's something I want to clear up.
I don't even know exactly what I want to say here, but like, does this
You were in love with Miss Morimura, weren't you?
justify everything that came before it?
You said she was mind hacked.
No, it feels like a cheat.
Yeah, because you talked about the only way that this story is gonna work is if it has like just the best ending. Is this the best ending?
No, it's not.
Is this is this satisfying to you?
It's not a terrible ending. I would say it's just.
Well, it's not the ending. We're at the first half of the characters, but
it's not. Let me put it this way: it's not a terrible, like, I guess, meta twist. It's not like the worst meta twist ever. But now, I guess the game has to stand or fall on its characters, and so far, I don't know. It's just it feels like most of the characters are driven by pretty generic, like logging, for example.
I feel like the writers lied to me.
Yeah.
The writers just lied to me because they had to create the most ridiculous setting to make this work.
Yeah, like
this is such an absolutely ridiculous setting.
Well, what? You've never been to a place that has 5 cities from different eras in the same place?
Although it looks like
I've never seen somebody promote like interstellar colonization with 5 identical cities that designed after different time periods.
I will say the Matrix...
And made sure that nobody would ever know about them.
The Matrix Reloaded
That people would live and die on this fucking colony ship without ever knowing that they weren't actually on Earth.
That I do think this is kind of like Matrix Reloaded. I mean, I'm gonna say a lot of these things are not that, like... This is what this genre is. Like this, I guess you could call it the time loop, mindfuck genre. I don't know what you call it, but it's part of the genre commitments that this has are all like this. Like it's just
there was certainly a way that you could make it be a colony ship, but not the 5 identical city colony
honestly,
ship where nobody knew about it.
Well, the Matrix Reloaded, which had a lot of problems that we're now coming to terms with. Remember, it had that whole architect scene where there are 5 identical versions of the Matrix, and this is just the 6th one, and they become.
But no, that is this, but on top of the 5 identical cities.
Yeah, okay, that's really. I mean, it's extremely convoluted, and it feels.
This is not one city that has had 5 iterations. This is 5 cities that have had multiple iterations.
Yeah, no, and 5 iterations of a fictional city, or not maybe it's a real city, but like yeah.
Well, not anymore. Remember, that was mankind's last.
I mean, yeah, but was it a real city in the real world?
I don't know.
Who cares?
It's too far in the future to even say.
Yeah, they probably are just working based on history books. Like the history itself is just photocopied.
Well, the people that designed this were in 2188.
Mm-hmm. So it's
and there is clearly not a 2188 land.
Maybe I can kind of see it like we've got a bunch of historical materials.
So it's like if you did find those logs, it would seem like they were in the future.
I think the reason that they're like is that way. Okay, you've got all the data from 1945 to 1985. You put that in one place. You put all the data from 1985 to 2025 in one place. I mean, I kind of see it from like from like a purely programming standpoint.
Sunsets will do that.
Like, but
Time period.
These are 1 million plus people in each one of these cities.
yeah, no, I mean, and it just feels.
There are 1 million plus real people in each one of these cities in this story.
Uh-huh.
So,
Seems like we've only seen about
Where am I
13,
going?
though.
I've rented an apartment under a false name.
Why do you have
can't be
apartments?
any worse than our last accommodations.
Why do?
Why? Because they gotta live somewhere
Oh yeah, well,
My apologies.
in this fake ass city.
yeah. It's like, well, who's paying rent? Like, what? Well, I need money for a
Certainly not Miss
Yakutoba pond.
Yeah,
sandwich.
don't forget that just because this is a colony ship
The funds and paperwork
floating in
were
space
invaluable.
or on a planet, well, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
And he's still missing.
it's
Is he?
did they still have a commerce? Like, why wouldn't they?
I guess. I mean, everything is being created by nanomachines, though. Why would you build? Why would you simulate capitalist scarcity?
Why would you simulate capitalism? Why would you simulate scarcity?
to stimulate the economy?
When you're clearly just like fucking building everything from like nanomachine bullshit?
Like, why do people have jobs in this world where everything's being created for them?
Because they have to emulate a 1985 city in Japan.
And why?
188. Namely,
Why?
Why do we have celebrities? Why do we have pop stars? Why do we have cats? I mean, cats are cool. We would keep those first. But like, why do we have talking cats?
a possible interpretation.
Why do we have?
Was Miyuki Inaba a real person in 1985 and they need to recreate that?
Was he so important? What would?
Is she a real person? Did she become a pop star in this in this city?
She wanted a
Yeah.
host for the
Did we have to
professor and
recreate that, or is it
herself.
like a Blade Runner thing with like the
All these questions and more will not be answered in this series.
like Tears in Rain? I don't know.
Well, that's the 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim.
Miss Mortimer
So I'm glad that we did 5 episodes in one day, because this was like this is the ultimate, like
synchronized to her.
to quote Sonic, I guess that was.
Yeah, I knew
Or
that
Shadow.
once we got to the shoe episode that it's like we're gonna have an hour long of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, no, I
Because how could you not after you've spent 10 hours in this game and you get that thrown at you?
why are there 2 Chihiro Morimuras?
Incapable of verbal communication.
Well,
So Miss
why did they create a Chihiro Morimura in both 1985 and 1945? 1945 land.
Well, I mean, I guess you could explain it by Morimura is like doing this. She was the one who was orchestrating this. new
It's true.
loop.
She's there for the start of the loop, so I guess
she has to.
she
monitor
decided
it.
to create another one of herself
Yeah, it's a monitor it with her memories and
as a
stuff.
backup in case the one in 1985 didn't work out for the memory implants.
Why don't they have a backup for
Who fucking knows?
all these
It-
people?
just-
Like,
Look, we're playing Kelvin Ball with the plot now. I can just do whatever.
exactly. Now, again, like
We can do whatever as long as it's not time travel.
I actually really like this kind of creative freedom, but I do feel like it's a delicate balance between that and lying, and I feel like they lied to us.
Well, don't worry. This is the first half of the characters' storylines,
I don't know where
they're
you
gonna
so we'll have plenty of time to explore this.
they're going to unwind all the lies over the course of this. Yes,
Oh yes, when only one character even knows about that twist in the first place, and he doesn't even seem to really understand it.
Uh huh.
This refers to the
He
human
doesn't really understand the implications of it.
So you're talking about Goto?
No, I'm talking about Shu.
Oh, okay.
first.
Shu's the only one that knows about it, and
With my own idea.
he's really the only one, and he doesn't really fully grasp it.
Well, he's probably like, looking at the sunset, smoking. He tries not to smoke, but he does sometimes.
Right? They only have one background. That excuses everything.
Yeah, no.
Version of myself.
That's what I said.
They couldn't have wrote a story around having this many backgrounds.
I don't think that's
They started with some art.
They had to create an incredibly convoluted story to explain why they can't go more than 5 feet away from each other.
I do wonder how many.
Because we all know that, like, yeah, when Death of a Salesman takes place in a single house or whatever, that it's like they wrote it to make sure that house is actually 7 different houses across hundreds of years.
I think there is something to be said for like a visual novel as being kind of the equivalent of a play, like as opposed to like a real film.
We talked about that a lot in Persona 5. Stage play logic.
Yeah. I mean, that was more for how the characters were arranged. Like, they had a huge budget for that game. That was just that was an abomination for all sorts of reasons, but I don't think it was a lack of budget.
the constant on the channel of shitting on Persona 5 continues.
Takemiya. Okay, so she's the delinquent girl.
That's Yuki, and that's Morimura. That's
like,
Morimura Prime, and that's Yuki Prime.
Okay. Wait. Oh, so these are all like Yuki. These are all like. Are they genetically programmed to be like mentally whatever? Is that why they're all professors, or are they just the only people left?
No, they're all just people that worked on the project, and I guess as such were put into the colony.
I see. So, for example,
and I guess that's probably why they would have the ability to like pilot the Sentinels, because they were all high-ranking people who created the thing in the first place.
Okay.
That's why it has to be these people in particular.
So, like, Miura is actually just somebody who is nostalgic for the 1940s. He's like
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Miro was like a chief engineer or something on the colony project. And so he was... Now, why would you have these things behind genetic locks if you were going to be creating clones of yourself? I guess the idea is you would never really think that they were going to access them because of the stupid way you set up these cities. Whatever, just accept it.
It's clearly not just one probe.
Just accept that this is what's happening. See, there you go.
People frequently die, and
from all 15 people who worked on the project, and you know who all those 15 are.
Yes,
it's the 13 people plus Tsukasa Okina and Tamao Karabe. There you go.
And
that's why they're the pilots.
Okay, and they just rebuild them from scratch because they've got nanomachines and advanced DNA technology.
No, they didn't rebuild them from scratch. They're just clones. They clearly have no memory or anything. We only know about stuff that's happening in 2188 because of the logs.
Okay, so now I guess here's the thing. I would say...
Although I guess Goto's storyline that we haven't even been paying attention to at all seems to imply that the tiny Chihiro Morimura that we see right here is... has had memories transplanted from Chihiro Morimura Prime from 2188.
Okay.
But she's the only one.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that
And Chihiro here doesn't want to admit that.
Okay.
That was your real plan.
And
if that is in fact true, and it is.
How does this track with Goto not understanding that he's all of this? What does he think he's doing right now?
How much of that log I've seen?
Okay. So at this point in time, you remember how Chihiro Morimura died?
Yeah, she was shot by...
At the start of A's storyline?
Yeah.
Well, Goto's trying to prove that this girl, who is a like mental clone of Chihiro Morimura Prime, killed her to try and keep the secret that she's actually, reincarnated herself as a clone.
I'd say based on that
the secret.
Wow, that is very confusing, even with all the information.
Does it matter, though?
yeah, and that's kind of...
Does it matter compared to everything else we talked about?
No, I don't think so.
It's like, oh no, the Chihiro Morimura from 2188 reincarnated herself as a clone. Who cares?
Yeah, no.
That's fine. Good for you. You did it. You did it, Morimura. Congratulations. Why'd you have to kill the other Morimura, though? I mean, I guess it's because, that she, being genetically identical or whatever, blah, 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 would be able to... I think Chihiro Morimura also probably knows about this.
Then allow me to clarify.
I mean, obviously, same thing with the cat. Chihiro, due to their information about loops, Ida, the cat, and Morimura know that this is a colony ship, basically.
Oh, okay, So, Tsukasa is actually the son of Morimura? Is that what they're...
Yes, but who cares?
I mean, again, no, I just...
What does it matter at this point?
What does it matter to you when you got a job to do?
The professor was faced with the truth.
You gotta do it well.
He was her son, and yeah, it's like, what difference does that make at all?
It doesn't really... it doesn't really give any... how to put this? It doesn't give it any emotional resonance to know any... Like, these revelations are just numbing at this point.
When it seemed like her end
Like,
was
that should be a huge deal. That should be like the biggest thing that's happened so far. And it's just like, oh, okay.
That's what you say about everything.
Well, maybe we're just numb, and maybe we're not in a position to appreciate a good story, but
You saw
I don't know.
You know, it's true.
But how? You'd need a biometric ID match to access
That's
A
a...
biometric ID, and I killed that person.
Been able to access
Well, it's also just that they're giving, like, they're telling us...
Dude, why would you lock things behind? Why would you lock things behind genetic information when you're cloning yourself? Because of the stupid way you set it up. That's why. I said that before. I'll say it again.
Yeah. Seems like this game should have been... Like,
Because you had no intent of anybody ever knowing that they're on a colony ship.
I've said this before. Sometimes I think when you finish, like writing something like this, I feel like that's when you're just getting started. Like if you're really being like you want to produce the best possible thing. Okay, you've gone through this. You figured out what is the bad idea, what is the problem with this, and then you go back and you rewrite it and you make it deep instead because you've got all the frameworks, you've got all the characters and stuff. And how can I make this good now? And so I guess that's what we're gonna find out in the second half of this game. Is just
True. We will find that out in the second half of the game.
So now that we've, and it sounds like it's not great.
Well, you've heard my opinion on it, but clearly, you know,
Well, you can form your own opinion, and the viewers at home can form theirs.
clearly my own feelings.
Personally,
Quite
I'm trying to get away from plot as just my, plot is not the only way that something can be good, like a good story. I mean, it's the sequence of things that happens, but it's like Macbeth. I just watched the Coen brothers, their version of Macbeth a couple months ago. And that's a really good movie. And the plot, I know the plot forward and back, it's pretty obvious, but they added a new twist. They added all these stylistic details. They added cinematography. The acting is amazing.
And as you're talking about this,
But, like, I feel like the problem with this game is that it's...
hey, Morimura, you can kill as many Morimuras as you want, but we got a whole bunch of them around here. Don't worry about that.
Is that Fugisaka? Or...
That's Fuyusaka.
Okay, I actually got her name right. Wow, I'm surprised.
Because it's just like there's a bunch of Morimuras around, as it turns out.
I believe the plural is Mori's Mura.
Ah, yes, of course.
And now we're back here.
Fuyusaka?
And yeah, it's kind of frustrating how everybody's just always bewildered. Like, it's...
a compatible version.
Like, does it really matter? Does it matter? So you're actually...
I mean...
You're not...
Like... I don't know. Plans for two new. Okay,
You're
so there you
actually-
go. That explains why there's the younger one and the 1985 one.
What was that? I'm sorry. How did they do that?
Why they created two Morimuras.
Okay.
Apart from the one of. Apart from the one that is the
Except that you both make my life
the
a
loop
lot harder.
remnant one.
So, suppose I am the professor.
Yes, exactly. Suppose I am the professor, then
I
what?
want to know the truth.
Yeah, so what?
I want to know the reasons behind all of this.
So does it matter?
But that seems
The reasons
unlikely.
behind all of this.
I imagine
All
you're
of what?
inclined to anything.
And what's that?
What the reason why they made the city like this?
So
That's really.
So he's saying all this, and he is not aware of the colony, the true.
Maybe he is. I don't know. Actually,
He seems like he's kind of in and out because he's aware that there's like a version of 2180, whatever. We're done.